It is 1153, and war-weary England is coming to the end of 20 years of civil strife. Empress Matilda, the granddaughter of William the Conqueror and only survivor of King Henry I, has sought to claim the throne from Stephen of Blois, who seized it at Henry's death. One of Matilda's supporters, John Marshall, has had his son, William, held hostage by Stephen. When Marshall reneges on a deal that would free William, the king threatens to kill the boy. Marshall replies,
"I still have the hammer and the anvil with which to forge still more and better sons,"
leaving young William to his fate. But Stephen and Matilda are able to negotiate a peace agreement. With the war over, Stephen relents, and on November 6, 1153, the boy is given his freedom. History in a day has been made. Unbeknownst to anyone present, this act of mercy will result in the Magna Carta, or Great Charter, the first document limiting the absolute power of government, and eventually lead to history's greatest expression of human rights, the Constitution of the United States. Let's see how the reprieve of the son of a minor noble, by a medieval king of England, has had such a profound influence on the philosophy of government throughout the world. Let's look at a history in days.
This video is presented by History in Days. This channel will focus on how the events of a single day can change history in ways no one could predict at the time. We will be publishing a series of short, 10-minute videos for all 365 days of the year. If you like history from a different perspective, or are just curious about how and why events interconnect, please remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel. And to receive notices of our new videos, please also click on the bell. And we will see you in your history in days that follow.
By the year 1066, England has been ruled by Saxon kings for 150 years. They have successfully defeated repeated Viking incursions and have established a unified English nation. Then, King Edward the Confessor dies, without a successor, leaving the throne vacant. Harold Godwinson, a brother-in-law of Edward's, is chosen by the Saxon nobles to be the next king. But foreign rulers are eyeing the riches of England and gathering their forces. The first to strike is the King of Norway, Harald Hardrada, known as the Thunderbolt of the North. Hardrada and Godwinson meet in late September at Stamford Bridge, in the north of England. Godwinson emerges victorious, saving his throne and ending the Viking Age in the process. But a new invader from across the Channel will afford him little opportunity to celebrate his victory. Just 3 days later, on September 28, William of Normandy lands in the south of England. Harold regathers his army and hurries south to meet the new threat. The two armies meet on October 14 at a place called Hastings. Although the battle goes well for Harold at first, he is killed in action. The advantage changes, and in the end, the Normans defeat the Saxons. William of Normandy is henceforth known to history as William the Conqueror, and the Norman subjugation of Saxon England begins. Under William and his son, William Rufus, the Normans used new methods of warfare and government to establish a harsh grip on England and its Saxon populace. They introduced the armored knight and build castles at strategic points throughout the land. They also introduced the philosophy of the divine right of kings. It is a legal system based on the dual doctrines that kings are appointed by God and all land belongs to the king. Control of the land gives government the power to determine what rights citizens are entitled to. Exercising this so-called divine right, both William and Rufus redistribute the English countryside to the Norman dukes, earls and barons they create. On August 2, 1100, Rufus dies in a hunting accident. He has no male heir. His younger brother ascends the throne and becomes Henry I of England. Henry also believes in the divine right of kings and continues his predecessor's harsh policies unabated. Plus, he has something that has recently become a bit of a rarity for English kings: a son. On November 25, 1120, Henry's son, heir to the throne of England, William of Adelin, along with a gathering of Norman lords and ladies, boards a royal yacht, known as the White Ship, for the return trip from Barfleur, Normandy to England. When the White Ship strikes a rock and sinks, all aboard, except one, are drowned. Unfortunately, the survivor is not William of Adelin. Unbelievably, once again, England's king has no male successor. When Henry dies in 1135, still without a male heir, there are once again two claimants to the English throne. The first is his daughter. Known as Empress Matilda, she had been married to the now deceased Holy Roman Emperor. Relieved of her marital duties in Germany and with her father dead, Matilda decides to return and assert her claim to the throne of England. She has the support of a large segment of the Norman nobility. The second is Henry's nephew, Stephen of Blois. Stephen is also supported by a large segment of the nobility, primarily because he is the closest male descendant of Henry still alive. Their contest for power plays out over the next 2 decades and comes to be known as the Anarchy. John Marshall is a minor noble supporting Matilda. He guards control of the strategic castle of Newbury. King Stephen besieges the castle and comes into possession of John's young son, William. When Marshall reneges on a deal to turn over the castle to Stephen, the life of the boy hostage is threatened by the king. Apparently confident that he will have more success than recent English monarchs, Marshall challenges the king to make good on his threat, pointing out he has all he needs to produce more and even better sons. It seems his doting father has consigned the life of his son to fate. However, Stephen is unwilling to kill the child. In any event, a peace agreement between him and Matilda is reached shortly thereafter, ending the Civil War and saving the life of the young William Marshall. He is released at the end of the war on November 6, 1153. Within a few months of the end of the Civil War, King Stephen is dead. Pursuant to the treaty, Henry, great-grandson of William the Conqueror and son of Empress Matilda, becomes King Henry II of England. The Plantagenet dynasty is founded. It will rule England for more than 300 years. One of his first acts is to marry the former Queen of France, Eleanor of Aquitaine. Acclaimed as a great beauty, Eleanor also brings vast holdings in France to the marriage, and they become a medieval power couple. Taken together, their holdings in France combined with the kingship of England become the Angevin Empire, one of the largest in Europe at the time. Meanwhile, the reprieved William Marshall is building a career. Being the fourth son and having no inheritance to fall back on, he has become a medieval rock star on the jousting tournament circuit. His prowess has earned him a steady living and brought him to the attention of young Henry Plantagenet, son of the King and Queen of England. He and young Henry become fast friends, and William is introduced to his father, King Henry. Recognizing William's abilities, Henry is the first king to confide in Marshall and count on him for guidance and counsel. Thus begins a career that spans 4 decades. William Marshall stands steadfastly behind the Plantagenets as their fortunes rise and fall. He serves as counselor to Henry II and his son, Henry the young king, who dies before his official coronation. Then he serves Richard I, known to history as the Lionheart, and John's infant son, the future Henry III. It is to William Marshall's service to John and his son that our story fast forwards to now. John comes to the throne with the death of his brother, Richard I, the Lionheart, in 1199. Although the royal treasury has been somewhat depleted by the foreign adventures of Richard, the Angevin Empire is intact and relatively stable. However, John will prove to be one of the worst monarchs in history. He embarks on a series of disastrous military campaigns, marked by poor strategy and tactics. His misadventures stretch English resources beyond their breaking point. At each step of the deterioration of his nation's condition, John's uniform response is to increase his tyranny and demand more and more resources from his overburdened population. It is during his reign that the tales of Robin Hood, robbing from the rich to give to the poor, probably originated. But John makes one critical mistake. His oppression is not confined to the peasants of his realm. It extends to his nobles. It gets so bad, they threaten revolution. William Marshall is instrumental in negotiating a way to peace. He advises John to sign a charter the disaffected nobles have drawn up. Desperate to save his throne, John agrees. On the 15th of June, 1215, in a field outside of London called Runnymede, King John of England signs a document which, for the first time in history, is a written statement limiting the powers of government. Magna Carta, the Great Charter. It contains the first guarantee to the right to trial.
No free man shall be seized or imprisoned, or stripped of his rights or possessions, or outlawed or exiled, or deprived of his standing in any other way, nor will we proceed with force against him, or send others to do so, except by the lawful judgment of his equals or by the law of the land.
The Great Charter also makes the first written statement of the equal rights of women to hold property.
At her husband's death, a widow may have her marriage portion and inheritance at once and without trouble. She shall pay nothing for her dower, marriage portion, or any inheritance that she and her husband held jointly on the day of his death.
Having signed this historic document, John immediately seeks to disavow its restrictions on his power, even petitioning Pope Innocent III to declare it invalid as being in opposition to the divine right of kings. The Pope does indeed invalidate the charter, and John proceeds to resume the policies and tactics which led to its creation in the first place. But the nobles are ready for him, and the threatened civil war begins again. Up and down war-weary England it rages. This time, the inflamed nobles have even offered the English throne to the King of France in exchange for his military support. With their connivance, Louis VIII sails to England with his army. Then suddenly, John does the one thing that truly, finally brings peace to England. He dies. John's last will directs that William Marshal be appointed guardian of his young son, destined to be Henry III. As such, he is also regent, or ruler, of England until Henry comes of age. In an amazing twist of fate, the young boy, whose life was spared by a king of England all those years ago, is now the de facto ruler of England. William Marshal now finds himself in a very strong position. As regent, he can very easily make himself permanent ruler of England. The orphan son of the despised King John will present very little obstacle to William's ambitions of kingship, should he choose to pursue it. But Marshal puts his country before himself. His first act is to reaffirm the Great Charter, the Magna Carta. He makes it, and its fledgling protections of all men and women, the law of England. With this act, Marshal constricts forever the unbridled power of government. The divine right of kings begins to tumble. So begins the long battle to enshrine the truth that kings and governments have no divine right to decide what our liberties are. 550 years later, the profound principles pronounced for the first time by Magna Carta reach their full expression in the greatest statement of human rights and dignities ever created. The Constitution of the United States of America is the first governing document founded on the bedrock truth that the rights of mankind come directly from our Creator. Government has only those rights which are granted to it by the men and women who are governed by it. Government does not give us our rights. We the people give government its rights. Whenever and wherever this is forgotten, tyranny has followed. America's founding fathers made no secret of their admiration for, and reliance on, the Great Charter for inspiration. One of their foremost members, John Adams, summed it up succinctly when he said,
"The fundamentals of the Constitution are stipulated in the Great Charter."
Speaking 150 years later, Woodrow Wilson, 28th President of the United States, put it this way.
Constitutional government may said to have had its rise at Runnymede, when the barons of England exacted the Magna Carta of John.
In the centuries that have followed William Marshal's brave enactment of Magna Carta, we have learned that freedom is not free. We owe much to those who have fought and died to preserve the truths of this document. We are also learning that our fight for freedom continues. But it all began that day, when the life of young William Marshal was spared, and he grew up to rule England. November 6, 1153. A History in Days.